If you would like some help on the non-verbal reasoning section of the 11 Plus, then you've come to the right place. This paper is very different to the verbal reasoning paper because it revolves around shapes and puzzles as opposed to words. I'm sure some of you may like the sound of this, but it is also understandable for this paper to feel a little daunting at first, as it is such a new concept to you all. But rest assured, I'm here to help. In this video, I will be using Non-Verbal Reasoning Paper 1 from the set of free GL assessment material, which you can find the link for on our school website under the School Admissions 11 Plus. In section 1, you are presented with a series of boxes. As you move from left to right, something changes within the boxes, and you have to spot what that change is and then carry out the change yourself to fill in the missing box. Once you feel more confident at these, it can help to draw in what you expect to see in the gap before comparing this against the answers on the right, and then select the one that matches. This way you won't be tempted by some of the red herrings they like to throw in within the answer options to try and trick you. Okay, so let's have a look at example 1. We can see here as you move through the series, the dot gains an extra ring around it. It has 0 rings here, 1 ring here, 2 rings and 3 rings. And the central dot stays the same and in the middle each time. Therefore, we can expect to see the central dot in this box as well. But as we noted, 0, 1, 2, 3 rings, we expect 4 rings to see here. So then we move to our answer options and find which box has 4 rings within it. A has 2, C doesn't have the central dot, D only 3 rings, E 1 ring. Therefore B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 rings round B with the central dot. That matches our theory. Let's select B, and that's the correct answer. Okay. Moving on to example 2, we are presented with arrows. The first thing I spot is that the arrows are increasing in number each time. We have 1, we have 2, 3 and 4. Don't be afraid to write round the boxes like I am now, because it can often help you when working out what the answer might be. So therefore the missing box must have 5 arrows. However, I can also see that the arrows are swapping directions, in which they point up and down. For example, they start down, up, down, up, down. So you'd expect here to see downward facing arrows. Therefore, there's 5 arrows facing down in this empty box, which is answer option C. Note there was 2 patterns going on in this question. Don't be alarmed by this, just work through each of them separately. So let's have a look at question 1. So with these 5 squares here, the middle one is missing. So one of these answer options on the right will fill the middle square. Now you can see it's not always the middle square that's missing. So do take note of that when looking at the sequence so you don't get muddled up later down the line. So when I first look at this sequence, I see that this outer ring changes each time. That's what first catches my attention. So here we've got a quarter of a ring. Here we've got half a ring, like a semicircle, aka 2 quarters. Then we have a missing box, then a full circle, which is 4 out of 4 parts, which is 1. And then it's back to a quarter of the circle. So therefore it goes from 1 part to 2 parts, gap to 4 parts, and then back to 1. So therefore in this sequence 1, 2, gap, 4, 1, we'd expect to see a 3 here, 3 out of 4 parts. So therefore 3 of these corners filled with this outer ring and the 4th one missing. And we can actually see that they add on in an anti-clockwise direction. So here you've got this one, and then the next one is here, not to the right of it. So we can imagine them adding in an anti-clockwise direction this way round, and therefore the 3 sections will look like that in the answer boxes. So therefore we can cross out C and E. Then the next thing to note is the middle lines making up sort of a X shape, a diamond, diamond X shape. So it alternates between the boxes, X, diamond, gap, diamond, X. Therefore here we would also expect an X shape. Now you'll have noticed that I've actually added the X shape on in exactly the same way they've created this X shape here. Now you might need to zoom in for this, but we've got a V and then another V at the bottom with a small gap in the middle. And we can see here that this matches answer option B. Here, if you look closely in A, they've added their lines like this, so the middle gap is not the same as this middle gap here. So just small little tips here to note that the big picture might look very similar, but you have to then look closely to see that the answer is in fact B and not A, and obviously not D, because it's not a diamond shape that we want here in the gap. Okay, so if that's all fine, then let's move on to question 2. So here the last box needs filling. So this one goes to this one, then this one goes to this one, this one goes to this one. So we want to find out what comes next after this 4th box. Okay, so first of all, we can look at S, the S of scans, which stands for shape. So here we can see that the shape changes each time. Now, the first thing I think of when a shape changes is the number of sides in that shape, because that often is the deciding factor. However, a quick look and you realise that there's actually 5 sides to each of these shapes. So that's obviously not a rule that's going on in this pattern. Now, sometimes you may think that you're onto something, but it doesn't actually work out. But don't worry, be resilient and have another try, because every time you try, you're closer to that final successful answer. So please just let's keep going. So we've noticed now that all the shapes are 5-sided. So unfortunately, this matches all the answers. So we move on and we find another rule that's going on in this pattern. So we can also see that you've got this funny V shape, then you've got this house sort of shape, then you've got a regular pentagon, and then this V shape again. So it's gone V, house, pentagon, V. Therefore, we would expect another house shape here, which immediately gets rid of A, C. So we're left with B, D, and E. Now we can see the differences between them is a circle or an oval. Now, when we take a look at our sequence, we've got circle, oval, oval. Therefore, we'd expect to see a circle here, which eliminates D. Now, you'll see that I'm eliminating the answer options as we go along. I would advise to do this because it narrows your focus down, so we're now only left with 2 shapes to look at, rather than trying to remember in your head what you've mentally eliminated. Just draw it straight down. So here we're left with B and E. Now, the only differences between these is that the circle's in the bottom left or the top right. So we need to work out where it needs to be. Now, we then look at our sequence again, and we realise that the circle actually moves from the bottom right to the top right, then to the top, then to the top left. So therefore, in this direction, we'd expect the next one to be at the bottom left. Therefore, the answer is B and not E. So there was a few things going on there, but don't be fazed because the patterns sort of build up, and sometimes you don't need to see every element of the pattern in order to find the answer, especially if you're eliminating things along the way. Okay, section 2's a little different to section 1. You'll see we've got two shapes here on the left with an arrow between them. The second is related to the first. So something's happened to change this first shape into the second, and it's up to us to work out what this change is and then to copy the same change to move from this third shape to the fourth shape that we're going to select now from the answer options. So it's giving us an example of these two shapes, and then we have to replicate the same change from the third shape to one of these, and that's what these colons mean. Okay, so moving on. So example 1, so we can see here that this blob sort of shape rotates 180 degrees between the first and the second. So imagine your pen this way, and the lid is this little blob that you can see at the top, and then it's rotated 180 degrees, so that's half a turn. And now the blob is on the bottom, and that's what we can see here. Okay, so let's copy this on from the third shape to then select the fourth, okay, and make a pair. So this one, the arrow's pointing down, so imagine the pen lid as the arrowhead and it's pointing downwards, so therefore we rotate this 180 degrees, and that's half a turn. So we'd expect to see now the arrowhead pointing upwards. So let's have a look at the answer options. This only applies to B and A, so we can get rid of C, D and E. Now, the difference here is that this one's smaller, and we can see here these are exactly the same size. It doesn't change size, so therefore this is just here to try and trick you. Therefore the answer is B. Practice question 1. So here it's moved from a shield sort of shape to a square, okay? Now, the size remains the same, and so does the line style. So therefore, this dashed line style here, we expect to see another dashed line style in that fourth shape, making up this second pair. So we can immediately get rid of A and D. So this shield is exactly the same shape as this shield here. The only difference is the dashed line. So therefore we'd expect the only difference between this square and this pair, this second shape of the pair, to be a dashed line. Therefore the answer is C. It hasn't rotated. This shield hasn't rotated, so why would the square? It hasn't rotated and it hasn't decreased in size. Therefore C is the correct answer. Brilliant. Now I think we're ready to start the questions. So let's turn over the page and begin. So, question 21. Here we can see that immediately these end stripes, if you will, are all the same. So therefore we'd expect these arrow things at the top and the bottom to remain the same. So we can quickly get rid of B and C. So A, D and E are what we're left with. Get rid of those two. So here we can see a square within a bigger triangle, and then suddenly the square is still within the bigger triangle, but the triangle has turned around and the square is now not slanted like this in a sort of diamond shape. It's head on flat, okay? So it's not slanted now, and the triangle has also changed the way it's facing. So we'd expect this outer shape to change from facing upwards, here facing downwards, so it faces up, then it faces down. Now if the start is facing down, we'd expect the next one to be facing up. Therefore we can get rid of A and we're left with D and E. So if you're not quite sure what I mean, if you think of it like a house and this is the roof is facing to the sky, and before the roof was facing to the ground, so we want it to face now to the sky, which therefore is D and E. Okay, so the differences between D and E are this middle shape. So we can see here that the middle shape is actually turned round. It's gone from slanted to now straight. So therefore we'd expect this, which is now straight, to go to slanted. It's just the same pattern being replicated in a new unfamiliar shape. So therefore this is sort of a straight regular shape that you'll have seen before. Therefore we expect to see it now slanted and not the same as it was before. Therefore the answer is E. Okay, so now looking at question 22, the first thing that I spot is that there's two next to each other and then there's two on top of each other. So therefore these two next to each other will be on top of each other, which is perfect because all of the answers are the same. So I know that I'm on the right track. So that should fill you with confidence that you're getting nearer to your answer. Okay, so let's look carefully now at what the minor differences are. So here we've got a circle and a triangle in it. Now we then try and find the circle here and it hasn't got the triangle in it. It's got this bench sort of shape. Okay, looks a bit like a pie, which you'll see later on at school. Okay, so it's a bench sort of shape now within the circle, and that's changed from the triangle. So these two middle shapes seems to have swapped over which shape they belong to, okay? So the triangle, which first belonged to the circle, now belongs to this weird wobbly shape, okay? So it's gone from circle to weird wobbly shape. Therefore, this one, which first belongs to the square, we expect it now to belong to the triangle. So we'd expect this arrow to be in the triangle, okay? Which happens in C and it happens in E. So we can get rid of D, B and A. Now we can also see here that the differences between C and E are the directions these middle shapes are facing. So if we just take the arrow, on C it's pointing down and on E it's pointing upwards. So we need to look back and think it was originally pointing down. Now, does this stay the same in the second pattern of the pair, or does it change? So we look back, and it's easier to look at probably the bench in this case, as opposed to the triangle. Either you can pick. So we'll just choose the bench. It's flat, it's fallen over, it's on the ground. Now, if you imagine the grass here, it's on the ground, and therefore it's then changed to stood up. Someone's come and put it back up again. So we'd expect now this arrow, from pointing downwards to change to suddenly pointing upwards, okay? Like this bench was facing the floor, now it's facing the sky. So pointing down, now pointing upwards, which therefore satisfies E. So therefore the answer is E and not C. Question 27. Okay, so there's quite small elements going on here, so don't be fazed by this again, just take each one separately. So we've got two horizontal rectangles and a middle one that's vertical, and then it goes two horizontal and two single squares, right? If you look what's in the squares, these two on the edges were originally together at the bottom. Okay, so the ones together at the bottom are suddenly on the edges, the top and bottom. So let's just move with this and carry this on. So these two at the bottom together, we want to see at the top and bottom of the second shape. So therefore, we want to see the triangle and the circle at the bottom and the black triangle at the top, which matches B and C. So we can straight away get rid of A, D and E. This is something that we've quickly got rid of and helps us get closer to our answer. So we've already eliminated only 2 options. So the differences between these are now the middle shapes. Okay, so what goes on in these middle shapes here? So the middle shapes here are made up of these 2 top shapes. So therefore we'd expect this middle shape to be made up of these 2 top shapes. So therefore the 2 top shapes come into the middle. Now, if you look at this carefully, this top shape becomes the bottom of this middle set. They swap over. So this top shape becomes the bottom of the middle set, and the bottom shape becomes on the top of the middle set of these 2. So we expect now to see the top shape become the bottom of the middle set and the bottom shape become the top of the middle set. Now if we split this into the middle set, we've already sorted out the top and bottoms, they're exactly the same, so we just need to look at this middle set. Now we've just said the top shape becomes the bottom of the middle set, therefore we expect to see this double-ended triangle at the bottom of the middle set, which matches C. Here it is at the bottom of the middle set, whereas on B it's at the top. It's the top shape of the middle set, so it's not B and it is C. Okay. In section 3, you're presented with 2 shapes on the left. Now it's up to you to decide which shape on the right is most like these 2 on the left. So you need to decide how these 2 are alike, what makes them part of the same family, and then which one of these would be included in the family. Okay, so these 2 are alike in having 4 sides. Therefore, we expect any more family members to be 4-sided, and therefore the only option of 4-sided shape is C. Therefore the answer is C. Now this is easy to spot because it's obvious the others aren't 4-sided. However, the details can get a lot more complicated than that, but with practice we'll get there. Okay, so let's have a look at the 2 practice questions below. So here we've got these 2 shapes. Now the outer edge is very different in these 2. We're not sure how that's related. So we'll start with this little black square being constant within both of the left shapes. So we expect to see another black square being constant in any more family members that come into this family. Okay, so we expect it to have a black circle in. Now the only option is B, that has a black circle. So then, again, the answer is B. Practice question 2. Now, these are 2 arrows. The arrowhead is a different size on both arrows. So obviously, the triangle doesn't have to be the same size. However, you'll know that triangles can be equilateral or scalene or isosceles. Now, these are equilateral because each of the sides are the same length, okay? So we expect to see any of the arrowheads to have equilateral triangles on them. Now we can see here that this is an isosceles. These 2 sides are very much longer than this bottom side. So therefore we can get rid of A. B, very odd, has 2 triangles for some reason. Get rid of that. C has an equilateral. D does not have an equilateral. the bottom side here is considerably longer than these two sides, and E, that's not even a triangle. So therefore, we're just left with C. Now from this one rule, this one simple rule, we've quickly got to our answer of C. Okay, so here, 42, we have sort of a speech bubble, an arrow, and a circle, and that's the same in these. Now, the arrow often changes the direction of which it points. Now, sometimes it points to a specific object, and here it's always pointing to this circle. So therefore, any more shapes joining this set, the arrow needs to be pointing to the circle. Therefore, it's not A. And all of these, the arrow still points to the circle. Now, you can see here that the arrow actually touches the circle in B. It's a bit further away in C, further away in D, and extremely far away in E. Okay, so therefore, we'd expect to see the same distance as the arrowhead is away from the circle in these two original shapes. So therefore, it's just slightly away from the circle. So therefore, we'd expect to see the same here. So it's not touching, it's just slightly away, which is in C, just slightly away in D, and it's very far away in E, so we can get rid of E. So C and D, what's the difference? Now, this curly bit on the speech bubble is in a different place, but we're not sure here because it's also in a different place here. So I'm thinking that's not got anything to do with it. It's a red herring thrown in, okay? So the second difference is that this arrow has a base on D and no base to it on C. There's no line here, whereas there is on D. And there's also lines on both of these, so therefore we'd expect to see any more family members having a line. So therefore the answer is D. So now the last one, question 47. So we have 3 arrows here, therefore we'd expect to see 3 arrows in the answers, which is correct. Now there's 2 and 1, always 2 and 1, so we expect to see always 2 and 1 arrows, which happens in A. There's 2 on one side, 1 on the other, 2 on one side, 1 on the other, 2 on one side, 1 on the other, 1 on each side, no, 2 on one side, 1 on the other, 2 on one side, is that 1 on the other? We're not sure, get rid of it. 2 on one side, 1 on the other. Okay, so in C, the 2 on the same side are not parallel. Now, by parallel, I mean that they follow the same line, okay? So there's the same distance between the 2 lines at all points across the line. So in C, they go like this. So this distance is shorter than this distance here, whereas in here, the distance stays the same each time. Okay, so we can get rid of C as well because that doesn't fit these 2 shapes. It comes up with something new, which we only want to see what we've seen already in these 2 originals. So therefore we've got answers A and D left to choose. Now we can see here that it's made up of 4 lines only. The middle shape is made up of only 4 lines, which matches A and E, okay? However, we can also see that these 2 triangles are the same, and this square or rectangle is the same. Now, we haven't seen any slanted sides, okay? So we're a bit sceptical of whether this will be seen in any other family members because we haven't seen it before. So we're not sure about that. We can just see a regular triangle and another regular triangle and a regular square. So we've got a regular square here. That's not a regular square. We've seen regular triangle, regular square / rectangle. So we expect to see another regular shape. And this isn't regular, okay? This is a tricky one because you could go for A or E here. The only minor difference is that this isn't a regular shape. Therefore, we can get rid of A because it's not a regular shape, and we can go for E. Okay, now if you joined these together, these slanted diagonals, it would actually make a rectangle, and a square is another form of a rectangle, whereas these would need turning. Okay, so please feel free to pause the video, continue with these questions from section 3, and we'll move on to section 4 when we're ready. Okay, so join me in a minute. Okay, so section 4, last section, woohoo! Right, to answer these questions you have to work out a code. So in the boxes on the left there are shapes with the code letters which go with them. So the top letters mean something different to the bottom letters, and you must decide how the letters go with the shapes, and then find the correct code for the test shape here from the set of 5 codes on the right, and mark its letters on the answer sheet. Okay, so the examples below we can go through together. Right, so the top letters mean something different to the bottom letters, remember. So although the top ones change, they correspond to the same thing each time. So it might be, probably will be, one of these letters that they correspond to. Okay, so let's just, I think it's easier to describe what I mean for section 4 with an example. So let's get started. So here we've got a circle, square, square. Now, these are the same shape. The letter they have in common is the Y, okay? So the letter they have in common is the Y, and the only thing they have in common is that they are the same shape. They are both squares, so therefore the Y must mean a square. And you can write this down at the top if you want. So Y equals square, okay? So now you know whenever you see a Y, it equals a square and vice versa. So because the Y is at the top and it corresponds to the shape, okay, then therefore we expect the X to also correspond to the shape. So therefore an X equals a circle, okay? Now this might be enough. We might have already got our answer, okay? So we move to the test shape, which is a circle, so therefore we expect it to be an X, but no, we need to work out the bottom letter, okay? So we look between the letters and we see on the bottom that this first box and the third box each have the letter S, so we need to think, right, okay, they've both got the letter S, what is common between the two? And the only thing that's common is that they are both white shapes, okay? So S equals white, and therefore the T must also correspond to the colour of the shape, and therefore T equals stripes. So we then move to the test shape with this knowledge, and it's stripy, so we expect this to be a T. XT, we look along, XT is answer option B. Okay, so now moving on to example 2. So step 1, we look at the top row separate to the bottom row. So step 1, which letters are the same? M and M, okay? Step 2, we look what makes, okay, what's common between the two boxes? What makes the M do its job, okay? So step 1, which boxes both have the same letter at the top or the bottom? So we've noted the M, and therefore what's common between the two M boxes? Now the only thing that's common is that they are both circles, so therefore M equals circle. And therefore N must also relate to the shape, which means N equals triangle. Okay, so there's a triangle here, we expect that to therefore be an N at the top. Now we then move on to the bottom row, And in fact, all of these are different letters, okay? But we do realise that the only other thing going on in these shapes are the fact that it might not have a circle in and the number of circles, okay? Well, it's the number of circles within the shape. So here there's none, here there's one, and here there's two. So therefore, G equals 0 circles, H equals 1 circle, I equals 2 circles. So with this knowledge, we move to the test shape. That's got no circles, 0 circles, therefore we expect to see a G there. So NG, which is answer option A. Okay? Okay, so question 61. Right, so here we can see the first and the third box have the letter L in both of them. So what's similar about box 1 and box 3? Okay, so the only thing that I can think is similar to these and different to the middle is the fact that these both have small circles and the middle has a big circle, okay? So the L means small circle and the M must mean big circle, okay? So then we need to look at the bottom row. So these are all different now. So what's different about every single box, right? And that is where they are positioned, okay? So it's A from the scans, and it's the arrangement or position, if you prefer, of the two shapes. So here they're separate, and here they're crossing, and then here they're on top of one another, okay? So Z is on top, Y is crossing, and X is apart, right? So here we have a small circle, therefore we want an L, okay? L, and we have the shapes crossing, so therefore a Y. Therefore the answer is C. Now sometimes you think that you've got it and you think the code is a big square or a little square, but you'll notice that there won't be an answer option to fit that particular pattern. So therefore, go back a few stages and try another idea and you'll get there in the end, okay? Now, moving on to question 64. So, gives ourselves a tick. So, what's similar about these two boxes? Because they both have C, whereas this one has D. Now, the only thing similar is the size of the circle. Therefore, the top row relates to the size of the circle, and C is a big circle and D is a small circle. So what can we see in the test shape? We can see a small circle, therefore D must be at the top, okay? Now, what's the bottom letter correspond to? Each of them are different, and the thing that's different in each of these boxes is the number of circles. Therefore, S equals 1 circle, R equals 2, T equals 3. Therefore, because this one has 1 circle, we want the letter S for 1 circle. Therefore, DS is the answer, and this is answer option E. Okay, and 65 is, we now have 4 shapes here, and none of their top letters are the same. So there's something that's different in each of these shapes which corresponds to the top letter. So this is obviously quite tricky to work out straight away. So let's jump to the bottom row to see if we have any common letters, and we do. These boxes both have a H. So what's the same about these two boxes? And it's the fact that they both have a triangle in them, okay? So H means triangle inside. Therefore, I must mean tower inside, which it has, and J must mean door shape inside, okay? So therefore, what do we have here? A door shape inside, therefore we need the letter J. And we can quickly eliminate A, C, sorry, not C, take that back, sorry, not C, D and E, therefore it's B, or C is the answer. So it's Q or S at the top. Now, which one is it? Okay, so what's different about all of these shapes? Obviously, the bottom relates to the inside shape, so the only thing left. Okay, so the Q must mean it's a shield on the outside. The R must mean a circle. The S must mean a door shape. And the T must mean a pentagon. Okay, so what we see in the test shape is a shield. Therefore, it must mean a Q must be present at the top box, okay, which is answer option B, okay? So I'm going to leave you to do the rest of this section 4 questions on your own. I'm sure you'll be fine. We're nearly at the end of the test, so you'll have picked up tips and tricks along the way. Remember to have a look at some spatial awareness questions, because they could also crop up on your 11 plus. And you might have realised through this practice paper that you're better at some sections than others. I think personally for me, I found section 3 and 4 easier, but you may be different. So I think it's worth taking this into account when you do the real test, because in terms of timings, you might move faster through some of the sections. Although these questions are completely new to you all, don't think that it's pointless doing them. You know, recently I've had to do these types of puzzles for an entry test for my medicine course at university. So I was really glad that I'd already done these before in my 11 plus all those years ago. Okay, so it's a great opportunity now to train your brain into thinking laterally, and this different way of thinking, which is something that you've not had an opportunity to do before at primary school. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you feel more confident now in the non-verbal reasoning section. Feel free to repeat this video as many times as you want. Maybe try a few more of the practice tests yourself. I hope you've enjoyed watching and you feel a bit more confident now, ready to attack the 11 plus, and good luck.